All right, let's return now to national politics. Members of Parliament have debated the President's State of the Nation address in Parliament over the past 2 days. Yuveka, let's get a sense now of what we can take out of all of this. It's been fairly fractious. Political commentator Karima Brown has been.
Yes, and Jeremy, if we can get past yesterday, and I think we're still battling, Karima, to get past yesterday and the shenanigans, and I think what we're all calling quite a disgrace. So, we have to ask at this point, before we get to the nitty-gritty of today, how long do we expect this to haunt us? And you have to wonder what the President is going to reply to all of this tomorrow, if he'll even mention it.
Absolutely. Lisa Vetta, an agenda activist, spoke this morning on this very channel about how the very serious issue of gender-based violence has been reduced to be a football between political parties. We saw earlier Shahan, for example, speaking to a legal expert just about the insults that have been traded and now court, challenges are being brought. And what it demonstrates, the takeaway for me here is, Yuveka, that the politicians that we've elected are so intent on brinkmanship that they forget that their first responsibility is to serve us, the public. And of course, they serve at our grace and at our discretion. We vote them into power. So I think that it is a terrible indictment on all the MPs in the House. So they've really brought the National Assembly into disrepute. And it, of course, started last week, Thursday, with the State of the Nation address. Today, sadly, was no different. So we had three really ridiculous instances today. The one being that the DA member who spoke to the questions of health, accused the Health Minister, Zweli Mkhize, of appointing people that are related to him. Now, you know, the story has been in the news, but more importantly, it has been found that the story is inaccurate. So the Minister got up and demanded that the statement be retracted, and the Speaker of the National Assembly, Thandi Modise, ruled on the matter after investigating. And initially the Democratic Alliance member said she had parliamentary privilege and she could speak to whatever she wanted to, she was protected. But when the Speaker ruled and the Speaker found that she did in fact cast aspersions on Dr. Mkhize's character without having foundation, the takeaway there is that even though you have parliamentary privilege, you cannot abuse it to perpetuate a lie. So she was called to order, she was forced to withdraw. And then we had Dr. Ndlozi from the EFF using another gaffe, which incidentally happened here on ENCA this morning. Stella Ndabeni-Abrams spoke with Colin Gambi about the fact that she denied that her husband was taken on state expenses. Exactly. But in the interview, she said that, she went to Geneva and New York. She was never in Switzerland. So the minister's obviously not using Google Maps or an atlas. And Dr. Ndlozi then called her out in the Parliament, but then also tried to tell everybody, they shouldn't be bringing different news organizations into disrepute. So very foolish, very silly, not dealing with the substantive matters.
While we are talking about the EFF, let's go back to Parliament. Flo Chivambu now at the podium.
Promises, investments, and list companies that are coming, but go and check where are we losing the most jobs in South Africa, in the manufacturing sector, in the industrial sector. But every time he comes here, since he was Minister of Economic Development, Trade and Industry, every time he makes industrial commitments, but there are no jobs that are coming. Instead, the biggest bloodbath in terms of jobs is in the manufacturing and industrial sectors. So it just talks majority of the times without anything. Check the trade deficit of South Africa. We continue to import more goods than we export. And we have got the most neoliberal trade policy that is presided over by him. Like virtually all products which could create jobs in South Africa are just coming in for free. Furniture products, plastic products, which we have got an industrial capacity to domestically produce. But there is no clear industrial policy that is presided by him to achieve that. But he speaks like that every time. Go and listen to all his speeches. From under Zuma, he was doing exactly the same thing. So if you are gullible, believe that guy. He's going to cause you serious trouble. Now, I'm going to deal with the issues that relate to dismantling of apartheid. And one of the pillars that we should deal with is broadly the dismantling of the apartheid pacts. So you would know that between 1908 and 1909, there was a convention on the Closer Union of South Africa. So 33 white men gathered to conceptualize this thing we call South Africa today. And at the conclusion of that, they decided to constitute a white-only unitary state and government, uniting the colonies of Transvaal, the Cape, the Orange River Colony, and Natal. And as part of that agreement, they said that because we are agreeing amongst ourselves, let us say that the administrative capital is going to be in Pretoria, Transvaal. The legislative capital will be in Cape Town, here where we are. And then the judicial capital will be, the apex court will be in Bloemfontein, representing the Orange River Colony. And then Natal, they just said, no, we just want the completion of a railway project, which they were campaigning for that time. We are here today in Cape Town because of a colonial pact. We are here because colonialists say that let us share power amongst ourselves, and we are still here, 25 years since democracy. So-called democracy, maybe. Why are we in Cape Town? It's not accessible. It doesn't make sense for a democratic parliament to be on the furthest corner of South Africa. That is why we say today, even in the Chief Whip's Forum, we had engagement with the Speaker that why can't we start a process of relocating Parliament to an area which is accessible? If we take Parliament to Gauteng, the people from Limpopo, from Mpumalanga, from Northwest, from KwaZulu-Natal, from the Northern Cape, will have an opportunity to drive in the morning, make a submission, and go back home at night. And the people, members of Parliament, we will have an opportunity to, on Mondays, Tuesdays, do their constituency work and still come and oversee the state and oversee government and pass legislation. When we are looking for accountability from the government departments, you do not need to wait for people to come with flights, whether business class or not, which is not saving any cost now, by the way. You just call them to say that from that department, let's call so and so to come and account here. What is difficult with dismantling that basic and simplest of the apartheid colonial pacts? Why are we still trapped there? Because the Speaker today was saying that no, it will take us 10 years to relocate Parliament. I mean, 10 years. There's lack of decisive leadership in the benches of the South African Natives National Congress. And I'll give you a context of why we're dealing with that, because once they had launched the union on the 31st of May 1910, the Natives Congress was a response to that white-only unitary government. And if you check in terms of what the Natives Congress said in its first constitution, it was recognizing the British Crown. So the foundation of the ANC was recognizing and worshipping the British Crown. You must go and read for yourself, you realize that. It was also saying that we're going to be a mediation between black people and this white-only government. Maybe you are living up to your standards, because what you are doing now, all these things that you speak, you are just being a mediator between black people and the white capitalist establishment. That is what defines you. You are being truthful to the roots of the South African National Natives Congress. That is who you are, a mediator of relations between so-called natives and the white capitalist establishment. That is one issue that we wanted to deal with. The second issue that we want to deal with is on energy. On energy. So now, anyone who tells you that you can have an energy plan that excludes coal in South Africa is misleading you or is daydreaming. So in your energy mix, don't lose the fact that your base load has to be coal. The CSIR has already invested some time and attention on clean coal energy and clean coal technologies. That must be looked into in terms of what we need to do. We should be pioneer as South Africa in terms of the clean coal technologies so that we continue to produce dependable energy which is going to at least create a platform for industrial expansion, for creation of jobs, for the expansion as well of the base through which you collect your revenue. Because currently your energy plan is disastrous. What you said here about what should happen to the energy space is disastrous. You can't sign in additional power purchase agreements. Anyone who is honest, the current CEO of Eskom said it, that don't impose further IPPs onto the Eskom's balance sheet because they are not sustainable. But you are doing so because the companies that you either founded or used to work for are part of the independent power producers. Pembani is part of the independent power producers. Shanduga is part of those who are benefiting from these power purchase agreements. Irrational arrangements. The ANC company, what is it called, that company? The investment arm of the ANC. Chancellor House is part of the same nonsensical arrangement. Why do you look for immediate solutions at the expense of a durable and dependable energy supply in South Africa? That should come to an end. Now, the simplest thing that you cannot do, you have failed in everything else in terms of how you can at least boost economic activity in South Africa. But the simplest thing that you can do is to change your procurement laws. So your manifesto, and majority of you here are hearing that for the first time. The ANC manifesto says 80% of the goods and services that the state is going to procure must be locally made. So what needs to happen is that we need to change all the procurement laws, the PFMMA and the FMMA, to say that the entire value chain of the goods and products and services that ultimately are going to be consumed by the state must be locally made. Currently, such is not the case. As basic things as food, the food that is given to hospitals, to prisons, to school feeding schemes, it's worth billions of rands. But if you check the origin of where that food comes from, you will find that it's from Brazil, the dumping that happens from the EU as well. Why can't we track that clearly in terms of making sure that everything else that the state consumes is domestically produced? And even your association with the World Trade Organization and those pacts will not regulate your movement in that regard. You can do it differently. Now, President, if anyone tells you that all is well, they are just singing for supper and misleading you. Our healthcare system is collapsing. A lot of our schools do not have basic toilets. The levels of poverty is deepening. Electricity supply is not dependable in South Africa. State-owned companies are not stable. And when we stand up here to speak about those who are responsible and them being held accountable, you then send your toy soldiers to come and raise a sensitive issue of gender-based violence in retaliation of us protesting against de Klerk and Pravin Gordhan. Your caucus, your whips, and you say these envious toy soldiers of a failed youth league
Point of order.
Come here and try to disrupt the commander-in-chief on the basis
on the point of order
of gender-based violence of all issues.
Honorable Shivambo.
Must relax, must not be emotional.
Take your seat.
Must sit down. It's being emotional. Sit down.
Honorable
Sit down.
Shivambo, honorable member, honorable members, don't rule from the floor, please. Let me do that. Yeah. Yes, honorable member.
Thank you, honorable deputy speaker. We don't know which member is a toy, but my point of order is that you can't say Pravin Gordhan is honorable member of this house. Address him properly. It's a point of order.
Yeah.
Stop howling.
Honorable Shivambo, that point of order is sustained. You know that's the practice.
Yeah, Mr. Gordhan, that is what the contributions comes. That is the level of contribution to correct people's names and references. It's small minds. Now, We've got a crisis in this country, and anyone who tells you otherwise is misleading you. You need to be honest, you need to be reflective, you need to listen to the superior logic of the economic emancipation movement. Yourselves, you have tried everything, you have tried all policies, you mislead each other, you contradict, you change this and change that, but you have not yet brought about a meaningful solution to the people of South Africa. The solution is only the economic freedom fighters. Thank you very much.
All right, there, the EFF's Chief Whip, Flo Chivambu. Karima, I don't know, 11 minutes well spent. I wasn't sure where he started or why he started there. Got to some point and then it kind of like just fizzled out.
He's supposed to be the brains trust of the EFF. So I understood him to have been able to use this opportunity to really do the cut and thrust of debating the national, the president. Unfortunately, he failed to deliver. His 10 minutes went down like a lead balloon. He gave us a history lecture on the African National Congress. We haven't heard one. So for me, he explained a lot of details, but he gave us one timeline that we can hold him to. So by the end of March, I think it would be important to have a conversation with the Energy Minister about whether or not they've delivered on what the President has told us. He addressed people, of course, on the sidelines today, journalists, on the plan. And he's the key. He needs to release some of that legislation. Yeah. And I'm glad that there is now a timeline that we can hold the Minister to so that we can see whether, he is talking through both sides of his mouth or whether he's actually going to deliver.
Okay, well, at least something coming out a little earlier. I'm not sure about the afternoon at the Sona debate. Thank you so much,
Pleasure.
Karima Brown.